These are the playsets, vehicles, and creatures from my GenX Star Wars collection. In the last video, I walked us through all the action figures that I have, and in this video, we'll be looking at all the bigger stuff, anything that's not an action figure, basically. I'll be covering them in the order that they appear in the movies, and we're talking about the original 3, which is episode 4, 5, and 6. Yes, it's confusing, but the original 3, all these toys were bought prior to, say, 86 or 87, so they're all from the original 3 movies, but we'll work through the sequence as they appear in the movies to the best of my recollection. For each of these bigger toys, what we're going to do is show the features of the toy, maybe using some of the action figures to recreate scenes that you might remember from the movies, and then we'll also discuss any defects or things that I've seen wrong with each of the toys. The first creature is the dewback. In the very beginning of Star Wars, episode 4, Leia gives R2 a message, and R2 grabs C-3PO, and they end up on Tatooine, where the Jawas capture them, and then they sell them to Luke. So Luke has the droids. R2 takes off looking for Kenobi. Luke and 3PO take off after R2, and that's when the Tusken Raiders hit Luke in the head until Ben Kenobi shows up and scares the Tuskens off, and then takes Luke and R2 and 3PO over to his crash pad to give Luke his father's lightsaber and get the message out of R2. That's before they all go to find Han and Chewie to ask for a ride to Alderaan. And as Chewie's getting the Falcon warmed up, that's when Greedo approaches Han, and Han's end up shooting Greedo, dead. In the background of all that is where the dewback comes in. Once Leia gets captured after sending R2 and 3PO away, the Empire says we need to go catch those droids because they have the plans for the Death Star. So you have the dewback is what the stormtroopers used to go get rid of the Jawas that sold them the droids and go looking for them. The dewback has a springy door up on the top, so you can put a figure like a stormtrooper in there. Has the kind of waistband thing, whatever you want to call it, harness, saddle. Legs and arms move. When you move the tail, the head moves as well like a proper lizard should. And from what I can tell, everything is there for the dewback. Next is the original Death Star from the very first Star Wars. The Death Star has basically 4 floors. So if we start at the bottom, that's the trash compactor. This trash compactor is empty. It does not have the original foam that came in there, and I think there was actually a monster that was in the trash as well, so I do not have those. But what it does is you have the trap door here. So if you remember from the movie, we've got 3PO and R2 trying to talk to the computer system. We've got Luke and Han and Chewie, and you can see the floors have pegs periodically. All the Star Wars figures will have holes in the feet, and that's for sticking on the little foot pegs. Leia is in the prisoner section. So these 3, Han, Luke, and Chewie, are off to save her. They end up getting in a shootout with stormtroopers. In order to avoid getting shot by the stormtroopers, they all dive down into the dumpster. However, the dumpster isn't designed quite right. You can see the wall, and that wall is all the way screwed back out. The dumpster is up against the brace where it should be. And what I realized, because you can't go in that way, is that I put the compactor in backwards. To put the trash compactor in the proper way, now it all makes sense, because now you can pop the door open and you can enter right into the main chamber. You can tighten the screw and squish them down. Now your door opens and they can get into the elevator to escape. So sorry about that confusion. Got the front door opening. The screw compactor works. So when Luke and Leia and Chewie and Han are about to get a lot thinner, it does squeeze them out. And then R2 can talk to the computer and open the trash compactor, and boom, there they go. There is an elevator in the Death Star. So you have a lever over here. You can move up and down. So if you want to put Mr. Kenobi in the elevator and you rotate it, so it's got an enclosure for safety, and then move him up to the top floor, then it kind of clicks in place, and you rotate the door over here, and here comes Ben, and he's out there wandering around trying to shut the power off for the tractor beam so they can escape the Death Star. You have your dude up here shooting the cannon, so we can sit him in that place, and he's ready to go destroy Alderaan or whatever he's going to shoot at today, target practice. It seems like there's some kind of a spring eject something or other on this, but I don't remember the details. It's spring loaded and you have a little lever, but I don't remember what it actually does. It's been many years. Maybe we'll put a Death Star droid up here just for good measure. Another scene from the movie is when Luke and Leia are getting chased by the troopers again, and the bridge sucks back. There was originally a little rope gadget that hung on here. I don't have that original rope, but what I did is just took a piece of like a wire tie, black wire tie, and you can put Luke's hand in it and you can swing them across the bridge and get safely to the elevator, just like in the movie. We have our Imperial commanders as well. Can be out here wandering around, avoiding Vader, hoping they don't get choked to death. Put our bridge back out. And eventually, their illustrious leader senses that there's something wrong, comes out with lightsaber blazing, and Obi-Wan comes out as well. Vroom, vroom, vroom. So, we meet again, Obi-Wan. This time, I will destroy you. So they have their big deal, and Ben disappears and becomes part of the Force. And Vader probably picked up his lightsaber and sold it at a pawn shop. Now in Empire, you don't have a Death Star, but you do have a Star Destroyer. So you can use this as a poor man's Star Destroyer if you'd like. Actually, it's more expensive. And in that scene, in the destroyer that I'm talking about, is where they're checking out the bounty hunters. You've got Vader doing interviews. You've got Bosk. You've got IG-88. You have our favorite homeless dude, Dengar. Have Zuckuss. And the master of bounty hunters, Boba Fett. Eventually, in Return of the Jedi, we have the Emperor admiring the scene out the galaxy, like a Hollywood actor on his beachfront property, just kind of immune to the reality happening around him. We have the Emperor's guards standing at the elevator, just like in the movie, but they let Vader by because they don't want to get choked out. And eventually the Emperor gets Luke mad enough that he turns on him, gets his lightsaber with his magic powers, and starts fighting Vader. Luke at some point decides to jump up into the structure. Vader throws his saber at him, messes up a bunch of stuff, then realizes he has a sister, Leia, and then Luke gets super aggro, jumps down, starts really smoking Vader with his saber, and has him laying there, ready to crush him. And the Emperor laughs, so Luke throws his fancy lightsaber, says, "Nope, I'm a Jedi like my father before me." Emperor comes over, who's so weak he needs a cane, yet somehow miraculously can shoot lightning out his fingers. He's got Luke about paralyzed. And Vader finally decides to do the right thing for once. Takes the Emperor, tosses him down the shaft where he explodes. Other things worth noting about the Death Star: I had to glue back one of these stickers in place. It is missing this support post, so it's fine with two, but it is missing a third one. I believe this Death Star had cardboard panels that slid in here and here, which makes it a little bit harder to see, but it did have those. I don't have those. So effectively this is missing the foaming monster from the trash compactor, the middle post, the two panels, and the original rope for them to swing on. The other thing I'll note is that the point right here where this piece latches in is broken. It doesn't have an effect on it because the center cap structurally holds everything together. But just making you aware that that center thing is broken. And I think that's everything worth noting about the Death Star. Next, we have the X-Wing fighter. The X-Wing fighter is used by Luke and other X-Wing pilots to blow up the Death Star at the end of the first Star Wars and in the other movies. This one, you have landing gear on the front. You have an R2 thing that you push down and it opens up to attack position. You have, and I believe that's the release for it. There we go. You release it. There you go. So Luke can come swooping in with his landing gear up and blow up the Death Star. This X-Wing fighter, however, is missing a few things. It does not have the canopy. It does not have any of the four cannons that were black, about yay long, that fit onto the sides here. And despite trying new batteries, it does not fire. You should be able to put the batteries in underneath here, which I did, push that button, and you should hear a cannon firing and the little red light show up. It no longer does that. I think these toys have just sat so long. In fact, none of the toys here with cannons like this work anymore, despite new batteries. So I guess the motors just sat too long or the circuits got corroded. When that's doing its thing, the next one is the TIE Fighter. This is the battle damaged TIE Fighter. So it's a little bit unique because it's blue instead of most of the TIE Fighters you see that are white. There were actually sticker options on the side that had like a blast pattern or something. So the TIE Fighter is flown by the TIE Fighter pilot. So if we move the little seat up here and we grab the TIE Fighter pilot, we can sit him in his cockpit. You have to be careful with the weapons not to lose them down the side in toys like this. And we close him in his cockpit and he's ready to go try to shoot at the X-Wing. The TIE Fighter has a couple other features. You have eject buttons for the wings. So if you get shot, they're spring loaded and they just pop right back into place. This also, from the factory, had a cannon. You push the button back here and you'd have a red light show up and you'd hear the cannon firing. But again, just like the X-Wing, despite putting in new batteries in the case and trying it, it still will not fire. So that's unfortunately not functioning on this one either. Next is the Tauntaun, and this is the Tauntaun with the opening belly. So, Tauntaun, this is going to be from Empire Strikes Back now. We've gone to the next movie. So Luke or whoever can sit in the top. It has the spring-loaded seat, just like the dewback over there. At some point, Luke and his Tauntaun get attacked by the Wampa. Knocks him over. Luke gets drug out, beat up by the Wampa. Luke is crawling through the snow. He sees the ghost of Obi-Wan. And the next thing he sees is Obi-Wan disappear. And here comes Han on his Tauntaun. After Han gets off his Tauntaun and tries to check on Luke, his Tauntaun falls over dead and freezes to death. He needs to keep him warm. So he takes Luke's lightsaber, which, yes, I realized was actually blue at the time, not green yet. But he takes the lightsaber, does a belly slice on the old Tauntaun, and take the saddle off. Now the belly opens so he can stick Luke in there, which will smell awesome, but keeps him warm, and now he can survive. So that's the Tauntaun. The next toy is the Snowspeeder. So the next morning, as Luke and Han are hanging out waiting to be rescued, here comes the Snowspeeder, comes cruising in, finds him. I've got two of the Luke X-Wing costume, basically figures in there, because that's what those guys wore. The Snowspeeder has landing gear. So if you pull this little thing back, there's your landing gear, and you basically put it back in like that. This toy also had a button here for the cannons, and there are two bigger batteries. I think there are C's going here, tried new batteries, and still no cannons. And I believe these things should light up as well as hearing a cannon. So that doesn't work, but I do have both cannons. The missing part I see is this little piece should go back. There should be one of these for this side as well. The canopy is not, it's here, but it's not all here. So you can see that it should have a frame that comes around on the bottoms that's broke, but the glass is there yet and the bulk of the canopy. There is also the harpoon on the back, and it's strung to its cable attachment point. So if we do this, I'll show why that's important in a minute. Next is the AT-AT walker, AT-AT walker. So it's the four-legged one, not to be confused with the AT-ST Scout Walker, which is the two-legged one. This has the cargo in here. I'll cover it now. There's the battery door right in there. I tried new batteries, and here's the button, and I still don't have any cannon noise or anything. This one is missing the face cannons. There should be two clear cannons that light up and go back and forth. They're missing as well, and I don't get any cannon noise, so that's the one thing I see not working on this and missing. From the cockpit, we can put in our AT-AT guys. There's one guy. Just going to take the weapon out so I don't lose it in the floorboard. And one of these AT-AT guys. So they're up there driving. And then back here, we have another AT-AT guy. And we have a couple of the snow troopers. So these aren't the normal stormtroopers, they're the ice and snow ones. They get the higher pay for bad weather, while the normal stormtroopers only do beach duty in Tatooine. And so you have the AT-AT walkers that were coming across the icy horizon of Hoth, and you had the rebel soldiers over on the other side trying to hold them off. Obviously the AT-ATs were a little bit more power than those guys. There was an ion cannon that was out available as a toy as well to try to take these out. And what the snowspeeder did, if you remember, is they said go for the legs. So what they ended up doing is they'd shoot their harpoons and wrap around the legs. And when they did that, they would trip the AT-AT. They would fly around, detach their cable, they'd fly away safe, and the AT-AT would fall over and explode. And then in one of them, Luke actually climbed up to the bottom while it was still standing, used his lightsaber to cut something, a hole in the belly of it, throw a bomb up there and explode that one as well. So that was kind of the Hoth scene, the ice and snow that gives me flashbacks from growing up in Iowa. The next of the bigger toys is Jabba the Hutt. That's right, the poster boy for fitness, Jabba the Hutt. And he still has his frog tank with his hookah pipe. And that's the original string that came with that. So you can sit there and pretend he's in Austin getting high. He's got Salacious Crumb with him, the little screeching critter that laughs pretty annoyingly. And he has the collar that was the chain, and this is what he used for, say, Slave Leia, which was, of course, all of our major disappointments. They never made a figure for Slave Leia, but as a disappointing second best, you can put it on Salacious Crumb. Underneath Jabba, if you move his fat body aside, you have the dungeon, if you will, that opens up. Oops. And I believe what this was supposed to represent is that from the movie, if you recall, they had the big grates in front of his stone platform, and he would drop people down there to the next toy that I'll cover in a minute. But these still open. Put him back here. And Salacious where he belongs. Got some of the figures from that scene. And if you recall at the beginning of the movie, R2 and 3PO come trotting in at Tatooine to the palace. They get escorted in front of Jabba. They play the message on R2, which is Luke saying, I'm going to offer you these two droids. And Bib Fortuna is kind of hanging out. They go process these two. So they go in here to this guy, and he tells them that they need a new interpreter droid, which means 3PO is going to go over here working for Jabba as a translator, and R2 is going to go work on the Bard ship. And then it also shows this guy burning the feet of a power droid, which doesn't make a lot of sense because the droid doesn't really have nerves, but whatever. Jabba also says, I will not give up my favorite decoration, and points at the frozen carbonite of Han Solo in the corner, his favorite art piece. Later, Boushh comes in, who's really Leia, and brings Chewbacca as a prisoner, wanting the bounty on him. So Chewie gets thrown in the drunk tank, and at night, Boushh comes over here and hits the magic buttons, and Solo comes out. But they get busted by Jabba. So Han goes to the drunk tank with Chewie, and that's where Leia, in this very non-cool costume that she had in the movie, sits up here as his new plaything. While Jabba's partying with his deadbeat buddies, they have their musical entertainment, which doesn't make the future look so bright. Max Rebo on his keyboard, Cy Snoodles on the vocals, and whatever this dude's name is on what appears to be a clarinet. The only thing that I know that's amiss with this group is the microphone for Cy Snoodles. The bass had broken, so that's been glued. Other than that, they're in shape. Jabba, again, I don't see any defects with that. Eventually Luke decides he needs to come in and save the day. So he comes in, he does the chokehold on the Gamorrean guards, comes up here, brainwashes Bib Fortuna to wake Jabba up, comes in here, and Jabba gets mad and hits the button and drops him down to the Rancor, which is the next creature. So this is the Rancor monster. And the Rancor has a lever in the back, can open his mouth. He has one arm that moves fine, both legs move fine. This arm, the right arm, however, has been glued in place many years ago because there's a little O-ring that holds the shoulder joint in place that was broke, so it has been super glued. I suppose if somebody wanted to, you could probably take it apart and try to fix it properly, but just letting you know, that right side has been glued. So the Rancor is here. Luke is fighting it, eventually destroys it by bringing the gate down on its head, kills the Rancor. And the Rancor keeper puts down his Big Mac and fries and comes over and cries about his pet being dead. This is the Imperial shuttle. So it was used in a couple different scenes. This particular one has its canopy that opens yet, and the glass for it as well. It has two lowering wings. So one of the defects with this is that when I bought it, the stop that ratchets the wings down on one side, I think it was the right side, was broken and I had to glue it. So as long as I'm gentle with it, I haven't had any issue with it. But if I remember right, you squeeze the trigger on the bottom and it comes down. And now you have the Imperial shuttle flying like you saw it in the movie. And then you squeeze the trigger and you rotate them back up and to the top. You also have landing gear on the bottom and the rear, so you can fold those upward if you want. Bring it back down so it can sit on its own 2 feet. It does have the rotating cannons out here. It has the button for a cannon back there. But again, like the others, even with new batteries I tried and it still won't make the cannon noise. There was no lights on this one. It was just the sound, but it doesn't work either. The front has the ramp that comes down. So you pull that out. Oops. And there's your ramp for getting off of it. You do have a cargo hold or passenger hold, so you can put your crew in there. Inserts back in. One of the scenes is where the Emperor comes down the ramp. He's got his Imperial guards for making sure nothing happens to him because they have their magic pool cues. And Darth Vader comes up to tell him how awesome progress on the Death Star is going, which he knows is a lie, but he doesn't want to get written up and sent to HR. The other scene is when it's the shuttle Triberian and it is Han and Chewie and Luke and Leia and R2 and 3PO and several Rebel commandos all take one of the shuttles down to Endor. And on Endor, they find the Hell's Angels of the Forest. In other words, several biker scouts riding what is the closest thing to a motorcycle in the first 3 movies. Speeder bikes. So the speeder bikes have a function where you push a button and they explode like that. The trick is you have to make sure you put it back together and are a little bit careful because otherwise they'll fly apart again. So you pop it back and spring load it. The speed bikes had a spring loaded deal. Obviously, these aren't elaborate action figures. They do not have bendy knees and ankles and everything, so it's a little bit hard to get them on a speed bike the way that they should be. So the little T-bar was kind of a way to set them on there. And obviously these things, the springs have worn a little bit, so they sag a little bit, but you still have your cannon up front. You have your handles here. He's got his gun, which is going to be hard if that's his throttle hand. But they take off and off they go. So there are 3 of the speed bikes to match with 3 of the biker scouts that I have. The only defect to really note on the speed bikes is that one of them has both rear flaps. One of them only has 1 flap, and one of them has no flaps. Those were the things that seem to fall off and get lost over the years. Other than that, the 3 speed bikes are complete. And this is the AT-ST or Scout Walker, the 2-legged one. It has a switch in the back, and you push the button, and its legs go up and down, kind of like a marionette, I guess. It's a little sticky, but you get the drift. Make it tap like a puppet, kind of. The head rotates, cannons rotate, this cannon rotates, this cannon rotates, and the lid opens and the whole lid, so you can put the AT-AT driver in his vehicle, and he's ready to go attack Ewoks. And that brings us to our last of the big items, the Ewok Village. The items on this to take note of is that this is not the original string. I have restrung the elevator over here, which is just a crank elevator. I have restrung the boulder over here, which can be used to knock a stormtrooper over. And I have also restrung the net underneath. So this was the net that, if you remember, a few of the guys were stuck in the net because Chewie was grabbing at food. Here's the guys in the net. We'll use Han and Chewie as an example. If you look up there, there's a T-handle. And if you pull the T-handle, it captures the guys in the net. So that's been restrung as well. But everything is in working order, thanks to some new black thread. The other thing that I would say is a defect is that on the one post, the little tab is bent. I have not glued it because it kind of sits fine if you have it still. You really don't notice it. But if you go to grab this one, it might pull apart. Other than that, I think everything is here. You have the railings. Everything else should be included. You have the carrier for prisoners, like they're holding Luke here. You have the barbecue, so you can go Hannibal Lecter on Solo and eat his liver with a side of fava beans and a fine Chianti. And you got all the Ewoks checking that out. And then before they roast Han, you can say Luke telling him, "Careful, or I'm gonna get mad and use my magic." And then 3PO floats around the air on his magic chair. And eventually they let Solo and the other guys go. At the end of the movie, after the Imperial bodies hit the floor, then all the Ewoks and everybody are partying up here at the Ewok Village. Closely they head to a bar on Endor. Got Solo working his magic over here, hoping Leia's done a couple tequila shots. And Luke at the end not only sees the ghost of Yoda and the ghost of Obi-Wan, but he also now sees the ghost of Anakin, because he just charbroiled Vader a couple hours earlier, and this is now Anakin's ghost. This is what Anakin's ghost looked like in the original movie. I believe the later versions, they actually made this ghost to look like the young Anakin from episodes 1, 2, and 3. But the original had that Anakin with Yoda and Obi-Wan, and that's where the movie ends. That's all the big stuff. So now you've seen the action figures, you've seen the other stuff, the playsets, the machines, the creatures, and there will be one more video showing the little odds and ends kind of bonus items. And once that one posts, then all of this will go on sale as one big lot on eBay, unless I have a prearranged buyer. The videos show any defects. There's also a spreadsheet, and I'll have a link below on my website to list out all the figures, all the toys, any defects, any special notes, so that you know exactly what you're getting when you bid. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel below, hit the bell for notifications, and let's live for today.